The first speaker is Ezra Parzibak, if I pronounced that correctly.
Yes.
Thank you very much for saying that, even if you don't mean it. I believe your microphone's probably turned. It looks like it's turned off. Could you press the button and get the green light there?
Testing.
Okay, and then again, if you could.
Testing.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
good. Thank you very much, Ezra.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. So now I'm speaking for myself as opposed to a client. First of all, I want to say that the marijuana industry is very small, and I have been honored to have personal relationships with a few of you and with other attorneys at the CCC. I have been amazed at how hard everyone is working to try and make this process go smoothly. A little bit about me: I come from the black market, what I call the free market. And I tried to get into the medical marijuana business early on, couldn't afford it. Then I had a team that was going to do recreational cannabis. Also, we couldn't get the funding. I'm in the process of being a social equity applicant because I was raided by federal agents in 2015. And now I started my own business with a partner doing consulting. So we help teams go through the process. We have about 22 of these applications in process. So I've had a lot of RFIs and spent a lot of time working in the system. So I have a show and tell that I'm going to give you, but right now I also wanted to say publicly that we're doing pro bono help for people who are having difficulty with this process because we're trying to make it smooth for everyone. And I'm not a lawyer, but I realized that lawyers wrote the regulations.
Well, two of us are not, and actually resent the association with.
I'm glad to hear that.
Seriously.
It's refreshing.
Yeah, Commissioner Flanagan and I are both very proud of the fact that we are not attorneys.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear it. Good to hear.
Well, let me not speak for her. I am.
Well, I will speak for Dick Evans, who you know, who
I
apologizes on a regular basis for writing such a cumbersome draft, helping to draft the regulations. But as he says, that's what could get passed. But I want to see if I can suggest a few things in the process. I'm not exactly sure what you can pass easily, but I do know that here's a very specific example. If you have a company.
Sorry, you've got 30 seconds left.
Okay, LLC. If you write LLC and you write the C lowercase, that requires an RFI, and you could make a 1-second mistake where you don't capitalize your LLC. A month later, the CCC comes back with an RFI and says, sorry, you need to correct the capital letter on that LLC. And it seems to me that that is a major burden just for the people looking at applications. So my show and tell is I researched Oklahoma, and I'm sure you've heard about it. They generated $350 million in the first year.
Ezra, again, you need to wind down,
Yep.
please.
The entire process is on 2 pages, and that's why they have 4,000 licenses. So I just want to hand this to you, and I have more for anyone who wants to see it. And I'm hoping that the licensing process can reflect that.
Okay. Thank you, Ezra. Are there any questions for Ezra? Thank you very much. We have 2 more speakers that are in expedited status. One, James Robinson. Is James here? And the next speaker after that will be someone I called before. Devonta Davis would be next. But James, welcome. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you.
Sorry.
I represent Gym Buddies Rec Shop Incorporated, application number MRN 281301. We submitted all 4 packets of our application on April 22nd of 2019. We received our first response for an RFI on October 16th, 176 days later. In that time, in that downtime, the interim, all of the time-sensitive material we submitted to you had expired. So the first RFI was about, amongst other things, all of that information that had been submitted to you for us to be refiled for again and submitted again. Also during that time, 6 months, you know, we locked down our location in June of 2018 when we responded to an RFI through the city of Chicopee for our location. So we locked our site down then. And we've been paying rent there for going on 20 months. At this point, I've submitted all 4 packets. I've gone through two RFIs. I don't even know if my application is complete. I have received nothing. We have no correspondence since mid-December. And we just want to know where we're at. You know, we've been working on this for 2 years, paying rent for a long time. We need to get to construction. We've been sitting and waiting for extended periods of times. Spent tens of thousands of dollars. Architects and engineers, construction companies, everybody's on hold waiting for us. And we just have no end in sight. And we feel like we've put all the information that you've asked of us, and we don't even have a certificate that we've submitted a complete application. And it's going on a year. That's all I want to say.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is Devonta Davis, is he here? Okay. I'm just going to, okay. Thank you.
He can't hear you. He's been asking for a long time. He signed up and he now needs to leave. He wants you to know that for the last 18 months, he's asked for an interpreter. He has no idea what he's doing. We've attempted to hire him as a liaison so that way he can come to these meetings on our behalf. Because our location is all the way in Hogan, as you can imagine, right?
Yep.
He's letting you know he can't hear you and he's been at every meeting and you've seen him.
I spoke with him downstairs. He put in a request for a interpreter for our February 6th meeting. I wrote him a note saying that we would accommodate that.
Why can't we have them at the State House, Mr. Hoffman,
We
where
can't.
it's automatically required in each room to have an interpreter?
We are trying to address the situation. Wait, there's a formal question.
Enough excuses. Let's do some action.
Excuse me, I'm going to try thank you very much, appreciate it. And again, we have an interpreter for you. You said thank you, and I'm grateful for your interest, and we'll have an interpreter February 6th as I promised. Thank you. Next speaker is Devonta Davis. Is Devonta here? Okay, we are now in the general applicant pool. I'm going to try to go through this and get everybody that's signed up ahead of time a chance to speak. We have a number of people that signed up today. I can't promise that we're going to get to everybody, but we'll certainly try to get to everybody that signed up ahead of time. The next speaker is Brian Adams, and the speaker after Brian will be Jonathan Vance. Is Brian here? Good afternoon, Brian.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Well, how are you?
Thank you. So I'd just like to introduce myself. My name's Brian Adams. I'm the founder and CEO of Hudson Botanical Processing, a potential processor and manufacturer. I'd like to take this opportunity to raise a few concerns and highlight areas of ambiguity within the regulations and application process. From an operational efficiency standpoint, the regulations for transportation is a little bit over the top. I do appreciate that you are trying to protect our products, public safety, and the safety of our employees, but I really don't understand how having 2 people in the car when cannabis is present is going to help in any way. If someone were to try to sting our vehicle with a deadly weapon, our employees are directed to comply with the perpetrator, as we are not taking the risk of anyone's life. If that person were to get away with the vehicle, all the other safeguards put in place by the regulations should stop the criminal from getting a hold of any marijuana product. In addition to tracking the vehicle with GPS, the secured lockbox will be a challenge to open, which will allow the police to get there before any products are diverted. I ask that you please reconsider the 2-person rule, as it is a financial burden to all cannabis businesses that is unnecessary and ultimately just another layer of red tape that is going to keep the black market in business longer than we all want. Next, I would like to touch on vapes. I'm a huge supporter of vapes, and I do believe when they are made correctly, they really are a safer alternative to smoking. However, I do not think your recent regulations go far enough to protect the safety of consumers. As you know, almost all the vape hardware comes from China. Many of these Chinese factories use dangerous metals to make these devices. Some of the factories have varying levels of ISO and CMGP accreditations, which we all know that who knows if those are even legitimate over there. I would like to see the commission come out with an approved vape hardware list that has been validated by a third-party consumer product testing lab. I do applaud you for the ban of vitamin E in vapes, but there are other additives and cutting agents like PG, PEG, and MCT that are harmful and can cause lipid pneumonia like vitamin E. Where I see the most ambiguity in the current regulations and guidance is with testing. It's clear that the batch sizes of flower are limited to 10 pounds, but it's very unclear for concentrates and infused products. I ask that you please consult with our labs, processors, and manufacturers to implement sensible batch limits to ensure safety for consumers, but to also make sure that it makes sense from an operational and financial point of view. I would like to see concentrates capped at a 1 kilogram batch size with sample sizes much less than the current 3.5 grams. And for infused products, a maximum batch size of 1,000 100 milligram units or 100 grams of infused THC with a sample size of 10 5 milligram pieces.
Ryan, 30 seconds, please.
Yep. Having high testing quality is only going to play to the hands of the black market, keeping legal prices high. I'll skip the rest. But lastly, I look forward to seeing your new system for application transparency. I really means a lot that you've made that initiative because it really does matter and allows business owners to make sound decisions. I'm always happy to answer questions and give insight into what I've seen during my time working in the Colorado and Massachusetts cannabis industries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any questions? Thank you very much, Brian. Next speaker is Jonathan Vance, and the speaker after Jonathan will be McKay Freeland. Jonathan? We were having somebody give names out in the hallway. Could we get somebody to do that just in case? The next speaker said Jonathan Vance and then McKay Freeland.
Jonathan Vance?
Yeah? McKay. Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm sorry, so you're Jonathan Vance?
Oh, no, I'm my partner, McKay Freeland. My name is Tim Kane.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. We'll come back to Jonathan. McKay Freeland. So I'm sorry, you're McKay Freeland?
Yes, yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of my partner.
That's fine. No problem. Could you introduce yourself, though, please?
All right. Hello, my name is Tim Kane. So I guess I'm also a little bit subscribed to the RMD priority myth, but I look forward to seeing that data, public documents to dissuade me otherwise. So we are applying to open Treeworks of Massachusetts, LLC, a product manufacturer in Hatfield. We went through the town approval steps in 2018 and applied for a business license as a general applicant on December 19th, 2018, 400 days ago today. In that time, we've received 2 RFIs from the commission, which we have thoroughly and quickly responded to. We are still waiting to have our application deemed complete. Here is some feedback generated from the 400 days in the queue. Start with positives. The positive impact plan, diversity plan, and community outreach meetings. All of these requirements force businesses to engage at a community level and to think critically about promoting diversity and inclusivity and how that can create a vibrant workplace and a forward-moving industry. These programs are very well thought out, and the long-term positive effects of instituting these programs could be massive. However, sustainability is being compromised by regulation here in Massachusetts. One way that it is currently impacting businesses is the disconnect between application requirements and the timeline for review once an application is submitted. Applicants do not receive a clear timeline. We are experiencing that firsthand, having paid almost $60,000 in rent and holding costs on our property while awaiting response to our application. Lots of other small business owners are dealing with a similar situation. Potential job opportunities are being lost and tax revenue missed out upon. Unrolling the industry at such a slow pace does not help anybody. Farmers trying to grow cannabis are facing major obstacles. In Massachusetts, almost all rec cannabis has been grown indoors by the big market players, and the security regulations, testing regs, and zoning requirements have made outdoor cultivation difficult and costly. Outdoor grow using organic farming practices features mainly free energy source, yields a healthier product, and is not reliant on the grid. We all need to work to ease and change regulations to better help our local farmers get licensed and be able to legally grow and sell the plant. Constant challenges posed by a brand new industry, applicants and legislators both must work together and constantly challenge, change, and improve things. So here are 2 potential solutions to improve the industry. Number 1 is to end the RMD priority. This no longer makes sense. It was set up to allow previously vertically integrated enterprises to get going and get the initial industry off the ground. That has absolutely worked. as the group, represented by a lot of the biggest money players, have been rolling in licenses. Before a brave protest at the December 19th meeting, the priority licensing scoreboard read RMD priority 146 licenses and economic empowerment priority 2 licenses. But now, more than 21 months after priority applications started being accepted, this no longer needs to exist. Ending RMD priority should focus priority on economic empowerment applicants.
Please wind down. You have 30 seconds, please, to wind down.
Yep.
Thank you.
And put the general applicant pool on level footing with RMD applicants. And the second suggestion I had, and I will send this over to you guys, is to expedite reviewal timeline, because the pool of pending applications in the queue continues to grow as the commission is not increasing the rate of provisional licensing. I'm glad to hear you guys are hiring more people, and I just want to finish by saying I think you guys are all doing a great job with the intents of the program, and as we continue to apply everything, I hope that we continue to make improvements to let small businesses in the industry.
Thank you very
for your
much.
time.
Appreciate any questions? Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Ellen Brown, followed by William Ryan. Ellen Brown? Is William Ryan here? Okay, we'll again circle back. Harlan Howard? And then Jonah Turner? Okay. Again, I'm going to come back at the end and go through all the names that were not here when I called there. Julie Hall? Keith Bisogno? Yeah, I thought he's here twice, I guess. Charles Reed III? Paul Lindholm? Paul. And the speaker after Paul is Blake Mensing? Good afternoon, Paul. Good afternoon. Thank you. Again, if you get close to the microphone, please. Thank you.
So good afternoon. My name is Paul Lindholm. I'm with Supercritical Mass Laboratories. We are seeking a product manufacturing license. I'd like to start by thanking the Commission for hosting this forum. I'm going to echo, I'm going to cut some of this out because it's kind of been done to death, but I'm going to echo some of the concerns people have raised today. Now, we understand the Commission faces the very difficult and complex task of establishing a safe and well-regulated cannabis industry from the ground up. As an applicant, I expected the licensing process to take time. It's a difficult process. However, my partners and I have now been waiting for over a year since we initially applied, after spending the previous year advocating for zoning to help small business in Worcester and working out our HCA with the city. And we still don't know when our application will be marked complete or when it will be up for review. All while we lease a facility, try to maintain our team, and continue to accumulate additional expenses. We've received 3 separate RFIs at this point, one of which was to resubmit background check documents that expired after a year had passed, while another was to submit updated language because regulations had changed since we initially submitted. While we supported the updates to regulations fully, it seems a little unfair to us that the Commission essentially is pushing our application back and thereby sort of punishing us because the initial regulations were less than satisfactory. We strongly support the Commission's efforts to encourage small businesses and people disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs to enter the industry, yet the length, expense, and uncertainty of the licensing process makes it incredibly difficult or even impossible for small businesses like ours to actually make it through the process. The goal of creating an equitable cannabis industry is at odds with the reality of the licensing process. Only the most well-funded groups can sustain the expenses of the application process, and not surprisingly, we see the industry coming under the control of these groups. We must make the licensing process more efficient to ensure that more local residents and small business owners who should be participating in the industry actually can. As we've gone through licensing, it's been difficult to communicate with the Commission
30
about
seconds, please.
okay, the timing and status of our application. It'd be helpful to have a clear estimate of the timeline we're facing so that we can make informed decisions regarding our lease, purchasing equipment, and planning the build-out of our facility. Commissioner Title touched on this already, and I was happy to hear it. And we agree wholeheartedly that it would be beneficial to both applicants and the Commission to establish a more open and transparent communication channel that is equally accessible to all, so that applicants can access the information they need and better understand their position in the order of review, and the Commission can address questions and concerns and continue to gather feedback to improve the process.
Paul, you need to wind down.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any questions for Paul? Thank you very much, Paul. Blake Mensing is next, and Derek Ross, I apologize. Derek Ross is on deck. Afternoon, Blake, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Hello, I'm Blake Mensing. I am a cannabis attorney, former municipal attorney, and an applicant for a retail, a manufacturing, and a cultivation. I'm going to cover a couple quick things. The host community agreement process is broken, and I believe the genesis of its status today is the decision not to review that contract. I have raised some serious issues of municipal malfeasance to the Commission back in December. I have yet to sit down to discuss those, and I'd like that to happen sooner rather than later. It strains credulity to me to think that there is no entity in this state that has the power to enforce what 94G Section 3D says as present in that contract. I talked to the Attorney General's office. They said talk to the Commission. We know what the Commission's stance on that is. What that has done is it's emboldened municipalities to say, okay, operator A gave us a fire truck, you have to too. If the true goal of this industry is to help undo some of the wrongs of the failed drug war, you can't have that. You can't have someone saying, because person or company A gave me that money, you must have that in order to get your signature. So I'm seeing provisions now that say you will not challenge the validity of this contract. That speaks of a guilty conscience to me. I've actually been negotiating against my former boss, where they said all we wanted was a set of accounting at the end of the year where you show us the receipts and we'll pay you that up to 3%, no problem. They said no. I said, what's your rationale? Every other town can do it. Why can't we? That's toddler level logic. Two wrongs don't make a right. So AG says we can't enforce. You say you can't enforce. Your name is Cannabis Control Commission. Who else would look at it? And I don't buy the whole, it takes an hour to read that contract. There's 6, 7 pages. If you have reviewers who can't read 6, 7 pages in an hour, I don't know what to say to that. So the RFI process, I'm getting RFIs, which in a vacuum sound okay. They say, okay, you revise our lease to make it clear that the landlord can't enter this facility without following the security protocols and that they can't seize the cannabis willy-nilly. I had a client who got that RFI where he is his own landlord. He's renting to himself through 2 different entities. Why was that RFI written? We've heard about the capitalization issue, the timelines resulting in expired documents. The biggest one that just drives me crazy is revise your proposed business timeline. We make our best guess. You control when things happen in that process. So you're now penalizing us for not guessing correctly. Each time we respond to an RFI, it's a month. People who are small business owners—
30 seconds, Blake.
People who are small business owners are bleeding money. The composition of the industry today, frankly, the quality of the products available on the shelves today, it's embarrassing. To a stoner like me, I want to be proud of our state. I want to say that's primo, that's top quality stuff grown for the love of the plant, not just profit. That's not what we have here.
Thank you, Blake.
I have way more to say.
Any questions for Blake?
Blake, I have a question.
Blake, this is not going to help us give an opportunity to every speaker. So,
Blake?
ask politely, but if you keep doing this, we're not going to have an opportunity for every speaker. So we have a question for Commissioner Title. Has a question for you, Blake?
Could you just repeat? You said that you had asked for a meeting on something and you wanted to happen
December
sooner?
11th, I emailed Executive Director Collins, Kyle Potvin. I got funneled to General Counsel Bailey. She called me without scheduling, and of course I couldn't call because I've got a gazillion things to do, and I've called back and emailed back, and we haven't
What's the
sat down.
topic of it?
A municipality, town council represents a bunch of towns out in western Massachusetts. His other towns got subpoenas from Andrew Lelling's office. He has told their Board of Selectmen, after the Board of Selectmen authorized us to enter into the negotiations and sign, we've hashed out all the details of the host community agreement. By opinion and fear, because the subpoenas received elsewhere, that town council said to his town, don't sign it. So that's a de facto ban. There's nothing we can do to force a municipality to a table. This town doesn't even have zoning bylaws. So I recorded an A&R plan to freeze zoning for 3 years. So they literally can't stop us except by sandbagging us. And that's page 1 of the municipal playbook.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Blake. Next speaker is Derek Ross, and after Derek is Matthew Medeiros. Is Derek here? Matthew Medeiros. And the speaker after Matthew will be Ned Flood. Matthew? Afternoon. Close to the microphone, please. Thanks.
How's this? Excellent.
Again, it's for the people in the back, but go ahead.
My
Thank
name is Matthew Medeiros. I'm the president of a company called Applicant Therapeutics Plainville LLC. We are a family-owned, majority-owned business, so all of my family have invested their money into this business. Essentially, we submitted our application on September 24th of 2019. Tomorrow marks the 120th day that we have not received anything for an RFI or so. And essentially, my question is, with all of these new and great programs that you guys have been implementing, essentially, where do I fall now? Essentially, when I was told before, I was told we're 80th in line to be reviewed, which is great. I've read that page so many times just with the word pending on it, and now with all of these new programs in, I just want to know, where do we stand? Like everybody else has expressed as well, we've been putting a ton of money into this business as a family as a whole. So what my concern is to go back to them and without an answer saying, well, I don't know, we're just going to keep putting money into this, and I don't know what to essentially tell my family as a whole. So my license number is MRN 282388. And essentially, I like everybody else's concerns. Everyone has expressed great conditions which are to be revised in this process. Secondarily, actually, I'm a scientist with a scientific background. I don't want to waste the time and go into it, essentially. But, with Congress now demanding more cannabis research as a whole and those bills getting passed, I go to the CCC guidance documentation, and I can't, as a, owner for a dispensary, I can't go into a testing laboratory facility. So essentially, I would like to do research and kind of expand what we actually know about the plant as a whole, so more issues don't come down the line where something is unhealthy to use. So my question really is, what processes can I go through to even do a research facility? I can't go to universities. I've tried. I need a ton of DA documentation. Most people won't support it because I have ownership in a cannabis entity. Secondarily, I can't even go to the FDA because, again, I have ownership in a cannabis entity. They don't want to talk to me whatsoever. So I'm here asking you guys, what will you guys do about cannabis research as a whole? I understand we have a large amount of applicants that need to be taken care of, but we need to start thinking about the future of this industry and what we're actually giving consumers and actually testing things. Not knocking anyone in the industry whatsoever. Thank you.
Any questions for Matthew? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Ned Flood, and the speaker after Ned is Thad Lucy. Is Ned here? Is that Ned standing up or just walking out of the room? Yeah, okay. Thad Lucy? Charles Salaby? Andrea Pierce? And the speaker after Andrea is Lynn McCarran. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. My name is Andrea Pierce. I'm the founder and owner of Royalty Group, which is a pending woman-owned business in the cannabis industry. We've been waiting 13 months for our provisional licensing, all the while of bleeding friends and family money of upwards to $35,000 a month to hold our properties, for which are being extorted by these cannabis industry landlords who were first approached by these corporate companies and said they would give them X amount of money. They don't win the host agreement. We do. Now we're being made to conform. I've been waiting for investment funding, but I can't get that until I get my provisional, as the investors see that as the prize of willing to do business with people. All the while, again, the landlords are taking advantage, and the corporate cannabis companies that are in the towns that I'm in are doing whatever they can legally to force me out of my locations because they want them. So they're challenging me with zoning, they're challenging me with all kinds of random things that now I have to come up with legal fees and all this extra money just to stay in the game. And I've been in the industry for 5 years and started from the ground up. Again, friends and family funding all of this. And I recently received my second RFI. So today with this meetings here is for us to go down things that will help you. In email responses from your CCC, might I suggest that there be a name of who's replying on the email so that there's accountability on replies? What if they're all different replies from different people receiving them from different CCC representatives? We need accountability on who's responding to the applicant so we know who's reviewing the application. I recently had a notice in my application portal that the CCC sent me an email with an additional RFI. However, I never received that email. I had an IT tech search my email just to make sure that I didn't miss it, it didn't go to spam, I never received it, it never went out from your organization. Might I suggest setting up a verification of notification on your platform so the CCC representatives who send emails can verify that they were actually sent and received. Women-owned business applicants, for which you suggested us to do the seminars to get the validation for, to expedite our licensing. Unfortunately, the process has a waiting time of 6 to 9 months. And even with all of my company documents sitting in their portal approved, it's going to be 3 to 6 months before they can even get an investigator to come out to do the inspection that is required. There's only 1 to 3, I believe she said, inspectors for the whole state. So all my documents are sitting there approved, but I have to wait for this inspection. So might I suggest an expedited review approval for women-owned businesses with provisional licensing while waiting on the inspection.
Andrew, 30 seconds, please.
Something along the lines of allowing an expedited status applied contingent on inspection. Background packets are having to be redone because the RFI process keeps coming back and the time for this is gone. That takes a lot of information and time on us. In the most recent RFI I received, one of the things was that I have to edit the verbiage all gender identities and sexual orientation and replace it with LGBTQ. Might I suggest that minor changes like that be addressed after a provisional license is issued so you're not holding us up for things like that?
Andrea? Yeah.
Request of verbiage shouldn't have nothing to do with approval of licensure. And one more very important thing. I spoke with the Department of Criminal Justice Information Services regarding the CORI forms you're using, and they said to me that it's unnecessary, the information that you're asking of us. There's only 3 pieces you need to do a background check, which is name, date of birth, and social. And I feel that instead of asking for all this personal information that's being put on your platform, I feel it's a security breach on a person's personal information.
Thanks, Andrea. Any questions? Commissioner Title?
Yes, so our staff worked really hard to build a process to cut that 6 to 9 months for review for women-owned businesses. So if you go to our public documents, you'll see an expedited review affidavit. So if you fill that out as a women-owned business, you can get the expedited review before you go through that process.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you for that information.
Who did
Thanks.
you speak to at DeCegis, just so I can touch base with them?
I'm sorry?
Who did you speak to at DeCegis?
Christopher, S-C-H-I-E-R, Schreinered, I believe his name is. I can email that to you, but I spoke to him and I have his name and email address.
Okay, yeah, please email it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Andrea. Lynn McCarron is next, and after Lynn, Amanda Cox. Lynn, good afternoon.
Thanks. As I said, my name is Lynn McCarron. I am a cultivation application.
Thank you.
And we've heard a lot about what I refer to as burn rate, or a lot of people refer to as burn rate, which is the money going out the door during the provisional or the licensing process. My question is, in order to mitigate it for provisional licensure, or between the time of provisional licensure and final licensure, I'm doing a tier 3, so looking at contained units. Would it be possible to do a percentage of canopy, have say I'm doing 20 units, and to start, get 5 units? So my burn rate, while I'm waiting, I still have all the security and everything at the facility, will be inspected, but I only put 5 units in, and then I will be doing the same, once I get the approval, another 5 or 10, to kind of, like I said, mitigate the burn rate.
Great. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I just.
Oh, sorry.
Submit that in writing, just. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And again, same for everybody speaking here.
Okay. Amanda Cox. And after Amanda is Matthew Brace. Amanda? I don't know what happened. Do you know what happened with our live stream, by any chance? Could somebody go and inquire what's going on, please? You're still getting it? Okay, well, okay, it's just these screens. Okay, so the live screen is working. Thank you very much for checking. I appreciate that. Amanda Cox, next was Matthew Brace. Is Matthew here? Yeah. Okay, Matthew, and then after Matthew, Harold Mateo. Good afternoon, Matthew. How are you?
I have a dozen kidney stones, but I'm good.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I know how painful that is, unfortunately, firsthand.
Piece cake, piece cake. Thank you guys very much. Not in a million years would I figure I'd be here. The first thing I want to say is to everyone behind me, in this room, we are all one. We all have the same problem. There's a big backlog. We got to look at each other as being the same. I'm not seeing anybody but really excellent business people in this room. So you're taking a chance. I'm taking a chance. I have a suggestion for the CCC, and I thought long and hard about making this suggestion because I don't want to make too much noise. This process with our provisional licenses, my group started this whole thing back in 2016. We were going to do an RMD. So we looked into the medical stuff and saw how much it was, how expensive it would be, but we learned the laws a little bit. Things were done a little different back then when it was DPH. You would pay a big fee. You were looked at as a responsible vendor pretty much just because of who you were and the money you were paying. You were given a provisional to go out and work. When the CCC took over, that stopped. Now we're in this situation where we have 388 or some odd, forgive me if I don't remember figures well, but all these people waiting for their provisional licenses. Now, what do we need to do to start a business? I've started businesses before in many different areas. You got to prove that you're a righteous, upstanding, suitable candidate for such business. You pay your fees, you do your applications, you go through the municipal stuff, and you get your provisional license to get going. Now, I suggest that we do that because we're not creating a marketplace here. We're keeping people back. Myself, I'm running out of money. My guys are running out of money. I'm not going to make mortgage next month if I don't do something funny. It's that bad. We really, really need to change that process. Now, you guys demonstrated in no uncertain terms at the last meeting that you can gavel in 31 licenses at once. That was exemplary, I think. Maybe not the best process to go with, but I understand why you did it. And what you demonstrated was your willingness to change procedures on the fly, which I commend you. I think it's a good thing to do. But the way we are doling out these provisional licenses has got to change. It's got to speed up, or else you're just going to lose these good people, because there's a lot of really good people that are waiting out there that want to help so bad. Myself, one of them. I almost died, and I am literally in this for my life. Okay, that's it. This is all that I'm going to do. I want to do it here in Massachusetts, where I was born. I don't want to go to New York. So that's all I want to say. So thank you guys very much.
Appreciate it, Matthew. Thank you.
Question.
Matthew?
Question.
Matthew, question?
Hi.
Sure, sorry.
I'm sorry, it didn't clearly come through to me what the suggestion was. It sounded like.
Suggestion is, I think we should really take a look at the DPH model when we were underneath the Department of Public Health and we were under a medical program. Okay, it was a lot easier to get a provisional license as an RMD applicant back then with the DPH. For some reason, I have a feeling I know why this happened, and I'm not going to discuss it in this room, but
For some reason, that didn't transfer over to the way you guys were doing businesses.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. So the suggestion is to.
I would suggest that you get your query done, do your background check, make sure you got a suitable applicant. It's not difficult. This is done in Illinois, it's done in Nevada, it's done all over the place, and it works, okay? You get a business going, okay, you get yourself a provisional, then you can go to a municipality who says, look, the state says he's okay.
So you're
You get a
suggesting
building.
start with background checks?
Start with the background check, okay?
Thank you.
Get good people, okay, that want to do it. Get the people that are behind us, right here, they want to do it, and they're suitable. They are. They wouldn't be here sitting through this stuff. Come on, who likes doing this, right?
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate it. Next speaker is Harold Mateo, followed by Mark Shepard. Harold Mateo. Mark Shepard. Sean Jackman. No, you're not going to speak. Thank you very much. Jack Carney. Jack Carney. Valerio Romano. Hey, Valerio. Next speaker after Valerio is Adrian Dean. Well, be careful. How are you, Valerio?
Great, Chairman, how are you?
Oh, thanks.
So my name is Valerio Romano. I think a lot of people in the room know me. I know the commissioners. I've had the privilege of working with you before. The reason I thought it would be interesting to speak, as opposed to just submit things in writing, is because we represent so many folks in the industry that it's like I can sort of consolidate a lot of the concerns with just me speaking about them. So I appreciate you giving me the time. So really, there are thousands of people in the Commonwealth waiting on jobs. Thousands of people waiting on jobs, waiting for these places to get open. So I sort of approach it from that angle. I go to these special permit hearings, I go to the commission inspections, and all these people are sort of waiting there anxiously. And so it's tough to watch that, just people sort of waiting on jobs. It's sort of hurtful for them. So I know it's been difficult to implement this program. And we all appreciate the effort. It's obvious from watching the commission hearings that you guys are thinking about these issues incredibly thoroughly. So we appreciate that effort. Some examples of delays that I've seen. 8 months for change of location to be approved. Over a year for corporate conversions, when really the commission's only job in a corporate conversion, is to certify that they have the provisional license and stamp the document. And you're waiting over a year for that approval. Staff doesn't realize that they receive municipal notifications for 5 or 6 weeks after the commission received them. 8 or 9 months for approved change of controls. So if there's a change of control, implicit in that is that company's out of money and they're trying to raise it and they're trying to get money or sell their company so that the thing can move forward and those people can get those jobs and we can get that cannabis in the industry. That's implicit in a change of control. If they had money, they wouldn't be raising it. When you're waiting 9 months to raise that money, it's death for that company. It's absolute death. And then emails and phone calls not answered. So those are some of the things that I thought are worth mentioning. Now solutions, right? It can't just be like, oh, these are the problems. There's solutions, and I think I have a few. So, and I'm not gonna repeat ones that I've heard a bunch of times, but one that I think is valuable is a point of contact for every application. So there's some accountability. Instead of, you get the commission emails back, and it is so cold, it's almost like hurtful. It's signed by the commission. It's this whole email, it's like, thank you, the commission. It's like, somebody must have written this, it's sort of like, and so I think that's tough. Point of contact, move applications to provisional quickly so that construction and local permitting can begin. Do RFIs, especially the silly ones, like the commas in an LLC, are they or not there? Do them after provisional, right? Like, you shouldn't wait for provisional. So I get an RFI, I respond to it, I wait 5 weeks, get another RFI, respond. That can happen after provisional. Folks should be able to move to provisional quickly, and then it's like, if it's an egregious regulatory violation, that's when you figure it out, right? Like if I'm saying I'm gonna buy cannabis out of state, or I'm gonna buy cannabis from a caregiver, those people obviously shouldn't be licensed.
30 seconds, please.
Finishing up, yeah. This is my biggest suggestion, is doing away with the open meeting requirement for you guys.
Good
right?
luck.
Seriously, no. Regulatory promulgation, you guys are subject to open meeting, right? You're a public body in the Commonwealth. But approving licenses, you're not, right? I don't think you are.
We're not going to get into that debate right now.
Okay, but
Go ahead, Commissioner McBride. No, as a non-attorney, I'm not
Look
getting into the
at chapter, right? Look at chapter 30A, sections 18 through 25. For the open meeting law, we are considered to be a public body.
No, absolutely, I get that part.
For all business before us, that is before us, which includes regulations and licensing decisions. Licensing is 100% within the commission body, those decisions.
Okay, so assuming that's the case, which, I would like to.
I'm going with Commissioner McBride on this.
Yes,
but keep going.
but then empower staff.
I mean, for better or for worse, I was the head of the Division of Open Government in the Attorney General's office.
Okay, so I guess
That's
I'll defer to you on
I'm
that.
sorry. I'm sorry to everybody. I apologize to everybody for that.
I'm gonna defer to you on that one, but then empower staff like Mr. Collins or whoever else to issue provisional licenses, right? Because then you'll be able to move them through more quickly. So that way you don't have to have every provisional license be subject to open meeting.
Larry, we need to,
Yes.
sorry, your time.
Well, we were in a little dialogue there.
Your
Yes.
time was up before we got into that, so.
Thank you,
very
Commissioner.
much
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Next speaker is Adrian Dean. Adrian here? Okay, Caroline Pierce, is she here? That's quite possibly a duplicate. Peter Bernard. And speaker after Peter is Maggie Kinsella. Afternoon, Peter. How are you?
Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Peter Bernard. I'm the Executive Director and Legislative Agent for Mass Sense, MGAC. I've also recently added Vice President and Press Secretary of the Massachusetts Cannabis Reform Coalition. So I'm wearing two hats these days. I'm only going to talk to you about things I know you might be able to do something about. And we'll bust open that old chestnut, my good friend, the host community agreement. What you can do is go to the Joint Committee on Cannabis Policy and push really hard for House Bill 3536 by Dave Rogers and Senate Bill 1128 by Julian Sear, because that will give you very clear authority in black and white. Read the bills I did. It says, you shall do this. Problem solved. And you guys putting pressure on them goes a long way. We'll talk a little bit about ratios too, because I've heard ratios mentioned in the past. It's not necessarily a bad idea. It wouldn't be a horrible compromise. Everybody wants to be first in line. There's a couple of different kinds of priority. Do a rotation. That way everybody's got a little bit more level footing. As part of my professional career, before I got into cannabis, I was an operations management corporate, and I also did a lot of business consulting as the efficiency expert, where I came in and looked at somebody's process and told them what was wrong with it and how to fix it. I don't know your process, but I can see from the results and the complaints in this room and that I hear at the functions I go to that it's horribly inefficient. If I was in charge of reviewing those packets, there would be a case manager or an application manager that was ultimately responsible for finding any RFI in any of those 4 packets. Their subordinate would be somebody that looked at one kind of packet only. They would report to the manager any RFIs they might find applicable. The manager would then have to double check it to make sure that nothing got fixed. You got 2 bites at the apple, issue it at the same time the applicant gets them all at once. Another way you could speed up the process a little bit is right now you have to submit all 4 packets at the same time. If as each packet was individually completed, it was able to undergo review, that would expedite the process as well. On top of that, it might take a temp agency and a few bodies teaching them how to go through those to work through the backlog so that you guys can get to a point of comfortable living and not have a room full of people complaining, where's my license?
Okay, thank you, Peter. Any questions? Yeah, Commissioner McBride?
Can you just repeat the idea about, so get all the RFIs at once
Right, so let's say the subordinate, it's the background check packet.
Mhm.
Let's say they find 2 RFIs. They pass that up to the case manager. The case manager now double checks and finds a third. So now you send all 3 of those off at once. When those are satisfied, that's the end of the process. You've had 2 eyes look at it. You've had an expert in each side. You already have experts on people looking at all of those packets. If you turn them into mentors to teach temp teams how to handle each individual packet, it might take you 3 weeks or maybe a month to get them up to speed. But at the end, you would still get through these reviews faster to the point where somebody could look at it and say whether or not it deserves a provisional.
So then would the idea be that once that packet goes out, that the applicant, you said something about 2 bites of the apple, the applicant gets 1 chance to respond to those RFIs or gets 2 chances? Because right now, the way the process works is that, and our licensing folks would have to delve deeper into this, that applications get reopened, right, all the time, and are reopened multiple times.
That's my point.
So
That's my point.
So it's either you get all the RFIs at once, applicant does all the RFIs, sends them back in, they come back in, if they aren't satisfactory, doesn't matter, they come up to us.
Well,
we
it's a
take vote.
different story if it comes back in wrong. I'm saying in a perfect world, you send them that 1 batch and they're able to satisfy that. If there's a couple they haven't, it's still faster than, I got one today, took me 2 weeks to answer it, took me a month and a half to hear back from you. 2 weeks later, I get another one, and they come in 1 at a time. That's not efficient. If they got them all at once and could see where they were in the process and had a case manager they could call and say, how's it going? How long do you think it's going to take? I got rent due again. I mean, that's just me. And I've run departments, and I like to find the easiest, most efficient way to do it. You've already got experts on those 4 packets. If you give them each 4 people, 1 for each packet, you could get through it quicker. The whole review process would be quicker. There's more eyes on it. It ultimately gets checked twice. If something comes back wrong in the end, the case manager is responsible. She's the sergeant. Those are her privates.
Right, or alternatively, right, if something comes back, and that's the agreed upon process, something comes back, it just comes up to us and we take a vote on it. And either it passes provision to revisional licensure, or it doesn't, and then the applicant goes back to square 1.
Or if they haven't satisfied all the RFIs appropriately, tell them what needs to be fixed and address those issues rather than putting the packet at the back of the line and starting all over again. Because that's what it sounds like is happening. That's what people are complaining to me is happening. Like I said, I don't know what your actual process is. All I'm saying is that if it was up to me, that would seem like an efficient process. I did a lot of technical process writing where, just like the law, you couldn't afford to go wrong. You're working with people's financial and personal data. You got to get it right the first time. So I understand that. And before I issued anything at OK, it went through 2 people, and it ended with me. It was up to me to say, all right, this looks good. Let's go with it. Or, no, go fix it. I mean, how many times, I can understand if they don't satisfy the RFI. But if they got them all at once, or as many of them at one time as they could, rather than onesie-twosie, it just seems to me to be things.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks.
Commissioner Title, hold on a second, Peter. Another one coming your way.
This is actually just a clarification. You mentioned the HCA bills. So in case you're not aware, the commission did formally request the legislature to grant us the authority to review HCA's.
Yeah, I mean, the reason those bills, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No,
you go ahead.
That's rude to me.
No, I'm talking way too much. You go.
No, I'm true. Please.
Okay. That was the end of that point, actually. You sure?
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
The second point was, if we did continue, if we changed the way the RFIs were sent, but we continued to allow people to keep trying again, instead of denying the applications, we would still likely end up with situations where there were very long open applications, simply because we're letting them try again instead of denying them. So I just wanted to make that point, but I do understand and appreciate the point you made as well.
Thanks.
We'll be aggravating them about those bills Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Peter. Maggie Kinsella is next, and Brian Tolliver is next. Hi, Maggie.
Hello, Maggie.
How are
Thank
you?
you. I'm good. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Thank you for holding this. We won't cause as much of a ruckus
As
today.
close to the mic as you can be. Thank you.
So I would like to just make a few suggestions as far as operational efficiencies go, to reiterate what Peter had said and a few other people. But I would also look at the RFI process and what kind of RFIs are being sent out and the way that people fill the application out to avoid things like capitalization errors. So when I was filling out an application, there's no copy paste. So when you're filling out the same information repeatedly, there's more room for error when you have to continuously type it out over and over again. And I would either suggest allowing copy paste or having a drop-down menu that has items that have already been filled out in the application, and then that way it will be consistent throughout the applications and so on. I'd also take a look at the way that their applications are being prioritized when they do get an RFI. So they have to answer it, it gets resubmitted because they reopen their packet, and how it's being prioritized when it comes back in. So is it at the back of the line, or is there a notification that says this priority applicant has completed these RFIs, and then they get put back at the top of the list kind of thing. And that was pretty much just the suggestions I had for operational efficiencies. And that I think hearing all the frustrations, you can understand why we've speculated some of the things we had. There was room for interpretation with the laws, and you have the job of interpreting those, which is very difficult. I'm not a lawyer. So when you weren't not in fact breaking the law with the operational and dispensing to qualified patients, but there was a policy change, thank you, Kay, for doing that, in making sure that those RMDs that had priority were already operational and dispensing to qualified patients, and that they weren't opening up in a separate town because they were already operational and dispensing to qualified patients in a different town. It really diluted the pool of applicants, and I had brought these concerns up 2 years ago that an RMD has already one position in the town. They already have a location, they're already up and running. So if a town's 20% of liquor stores is one facility, that RMD already has that location. And why things like the one-to-one and them not being operational really hindered an applicant's ability to compete as a priority applicant with places who kind of already had reign over locations and then could add more locations onto their application, like we saw in Plymouth, I think it was, or something in the Cape. And I would just ask that as a commission, it might be helpful if there's some sort of responsibility taken for the interpretation of the laws, and seeing that some of the warnings that we did try to deliver a couple years ago, the consequences have transpired as such. And I mean, unfortunately, we even have the federal government investigating community host agreements because of what's going on at the municipal level. And so, anything that we can do to speed up the legislative process, if you absolutely 100% need those clarifications in order to implement those correctly, well, we need to do that, because I think the interpretation itself really hurt economic empowerment applicants. It's hurting patients now as well. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Questions, comments?
Just a quick comment, because I've clarified this a couple times with our staff. The priority status does run throughout. So if you're an economic empowerment priority applicant and you have an RFI and you respond, that will be reviewed ahead of others.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Next speaker is Brian Tolliver, and after Brian is Ansh Bamar. Is Brian here? Okay. Is Ansh Bamar here? Yes. And my apologies if I... Joe, could you let him pass?
Sorry?
I just want to make sure you didn't trip over that cord as you were walking up. And after Ansh is Lillian Breen. Ansh, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
A little closer. A little closer to the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
That's me.
Mine, I'll be pretty short up here, but mine was regarding the opportunities that exist beyond just being having some of the existing license approvals and provisional licenses for things that are already in the process. So for instance, legislation was passed in, I believe, end of September for marijuana delivery. And there's been very little transparency on when the opportunity for that will arise, when applications will open, how those will be processed, what is the capital that's required for that application process. So just wanted a little bit more transparency in some of those opportunities that exist. And even if there isn't a plan, just some idea, a rough idea of what the commission is looking at so that we can make preparations on our end.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. We will get that out. Next speaker that has signed up, actually the last speaker that signed up is Lillian Breen. Is she here? Okay, what I'm going to do, yes.
My name is Nicholas Gomes, Treebeard, an Economic Empowerment Group Council. I was not called. If possible, you have time.
I think we were called, but I'm going to go back. If you wouldn't mind, just give me a second. I'm going to go back and go through everybody that was called that didn't speak, and I'm sure I'm going to get to your name. So let me just do that. I'm just going to go in order of the people I called. Francis Burns, Trevor Barnes, Dr. Uma, John Moore, Haskell Kennedy, Jonathan Vance, Eileen Brown, or excuse me, Ellen Brown, I apologize. William Ryan, Harlan Howard, Jonah Turner, Julie Hall, Charles Reed, Derek Ross, Ned Flood, Thad Lucy, Charles Salaby, Amanda Cox, Harold Mateo, Mark Shepard, Jack Carney. So, sir, if I missed you, I truly apologize, but...
No, it's in the list of people who signed up today. So
signed up today?
Yep, the written list after. So we actually have a, hang on, we actually have a list this year.
Okay, I thought he said he'd signed up previously, so... Okay, so, I'm sorry, I'm going to get through, that's the next group of people.
Okay, you're going to continue on calling, thank you.
Yep, that's the next group of people that I'm going to go through, and that is it. We have another, I don't know, 15 or so. I'm not sure everybody will be here, but let me give people that signed up today the opportunity to speak. Bianca Bray, or Bree?
Gone.
Gone, okay.
Mike's wife.
Lorna McCaffrey.
I'm gone.
Abigail Schnibel.
Here.
Abigail. And Lucas there, if he's still here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I figured you'd still be here, Lucas. You're next. SCHNI. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Good afternoon. My name is Abigail Schnibbe. It's funny. And I'm the Vice President of Operations for Plymouth Armor Group.
My apologies.
No worries. Story of my life. I want to start out by saying thank you for hosting these public forums to allow applicants like myself a chance to speak on our behalf. I come before you today as a third-party transporter applicant, as well as one of the founding members of the Massachusetts Association of Cannabis Transporters. Although we do not represent all of the third-party transporters in the state, we formed this fall as a result of our own concern regarding compliance and public safety, or the lack thereof, within transportation in the industry. We believe we are stronger in numbers and started this association to both advocate on our behalf, talk shop, and develop strategies for supporting social equity and economic empowerment applicants from our own transportation niche, specifically for home delivery. As we all know, compliance and public safety go hand in hand. With 0 third-party transporters receiving commenced operations in the state at this time, recreational dispensaries and cultivation sites are either left without a licensed transportation solution or left to build out their own transportation solution altogether, making the hoops to licensing that much harder to jump through, and increasing costs for businesses already struggling to sustain in the licensing process. In this case, compliance suffers, public safety is now at an increased risk, and businesses are struggling even more than they already are. I cannot tell you how many times I have received calls from even operational recreational sites inquiring whether or not we've received our license yet, desperate for a transportation solution, saying, literally, Abby, I just don't know what we're going to do at this point. And we all just want to be compliant, and folks are struggling to keep, products on their shelves, grow their businesses when they can't even get the product to their location in the first place. I understand that your resources are limited. I understand you're stretched thin. It's the cannabis industry. I think we're all stretched pretty thin at this point. I urge you today to consider the implications of a continued delay in assessing and licensing third-party transporters. I'm not here to say push my application through by any means. I'm here to advocate for all third-party transporters to ensure we have the safest 100% compliant options available to licensed retailers, cultivators, and manufacturers. When the transportation experts aren't the ones spearheading the transportation within the industry, that's a problem. When folks who've already put everything they have into getting their businesses off the ground and then find out they have no way to get their product to retail locations and need to spend even more capital, that's a problem. When ancillary businesses like mine are required to go through a licensing process that is arguably created primarily for retailers and cultivators.
Abigail, 30 seconds.
Thank you, and generally does not apply to the nature of my business, that's a problem. So I appreciate your willingness to listen and for this opportunity to present my concerns. I hope this brings some cause for increased discussion, perhaps a roundtable specifically on third-party transportation and transportation solutions. Compliance and public safety and security in transportation is huge. I feel like we're very secure when we're at locations. When we leave, when risk really increases. And so thank you for hearing me out, and I hope we can have a roundtable very soon.
Thank you, Abigail.
Take care.
Next speaker is Lucas Thayer, and I think David Cabral has left. Is that correct? Then the speaker after Lucas will be Jeremy Moon. Lucas, how are you?
Great, thanks. Thanks so much, commissioners, for hosting this informational session. I really appreciate you guys listening to all these applicants who are clearly very upset about their applications taking a really long time. I'm early on in the application process. I've had my community outreach meeting with the town that I'm hoping to be cultivating in, and I'm seeing some of the hurdles at the local level where the requirements that the CCC has generated, especially for outdoor cultivation, that's mostly what I'll be thinking and talking about, is there's too much requirement for fencing and too much requirement for the lighting for security as compared to what neighbors want to see. Neighbors don't like ugly fencing, and they don't like lights in areas that don't have lights generally, and also wildlife and plants don't like light at nighttime if it's not part of their routine. And so these, and also the requirement for computers to house the security footage for the cameras for 90 days is cumbersome for an outdoor farmer whose site is generally all outside. Someone with a building can put a computer in a building, and that's easy because you have all the climate controls of a building. But someone who's intending to operate in a field is then required to build a structure, and then you have to talk to the building department in order to build your structure to house your computers and build another building to house your product. All of those requirements make it more cumbersome to actually do a truly outdoor operation. And the setback requirement is also more cumbersome. If there's any requirement to set back a cultivation site from property lines, that means that only landowners with big pieces of land can operate in the industry. And I'd like to see more small farmers be able to have smaller gardens. There should also be a way for outdoor growers to apply to grow their 12, grow a very, very small amount, and have less of hurdles to jump through for the simple grower. The simple small farmer should be able to sell the crop of their 12 to reimburse their costs of producing this 12 without so much of in the way of regulations that they have to go through and the fees and everything.
30 seconds, please.
30 seconds. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
And also, I want to see more options for outdoor growers to be able to have transporters and manufacturers take their crop and have it processed into extracts. There really aren't very many of these transporters that could bring it away, or manufacturers that aren't also tied in with cultivation. So those standalone, I mean, the idea that the adult use market is not vertically integrated is wonderful. I just want to see it applied more. I feel like the vertical integration of the RMD world has rolled over into the adult use market, which I don't think was the intention of the commission. So, wanted to see
Thanks,
more
Lucas. Any
elaborate.
questions? Thank you, Lucas. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much.
Next speaker is Jeremy Moon. William Douglas. Julie Maya. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I apologize. Gone. Okay. Next speaker, Morris Partee. Morris here? Oh, he spoke? Okay, I'm sorry that he signed up again, so I'm sorry that I haven't kept track of 96 names. Ed Stampanowitz. Matt Draw. My namesake, Matthew Hoffman. Are we related? Nicholas Gomes?
Yes.
Yep. How are you?
Hello and good afternoon, Commissioner members. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you, members of the community who are still here, supporting everyone in the economic empowerment companies in particular. My name is Nicholas Gomes. I am from the city of New Bedford, down on the south coast, closer to Rhode Island than Boston. And it's quite the trip to get here, but we had a special opportunity to do so, and I felt it very important on behalf of all economic empowerment companies. New Bedford has 4 potential companies that are moving forward. We are the only one seeking a vertically integrated retail, as well as cultivation, manufacturing, transportation. It is a team approach, and as a lifelong resident of Massachusetts, I am proud to be here before you and talk about economic empowerment. I believe our company itself pays ode to the former New Bedford residents who were there for our independence and following to make sure with Massachusetts and its compromise that certain rights were included in the Constitution, Bill of Rights, so that we could be here today. Myself, with the right against unreasonable search and seizures. I am a white male, but where I come from, the police do not care, and they prosecuted without impunity. If you had a baseball hat on, a jersey, your car was being pulled over, you had fancy rims, your car had a certain color, you were being pulled over and I believe equally prosecuted. If it wasn't for you, it's because they were going up the supply chain and looking for the bigger fish. New Bedford has the #1 port in the United States, yet its inhabitants and the city itself continues to struggle. The statistics that the Control Commission compiled during 2000-2013 showed that New Bedford was the 3rd most disproportionately impacted city among the 29 that were found. Notably, the 2 before it, the heart city of Worcester, Pier, and then Springfield, are parts of much larger census tracts. So looking at this updated statistics to 2018 with the FBI, crime has decreased overall, but it still shows that for a small city, it is having a tremendous impact in this illegal market. New Bedford has essentially been the place that's the end of the road. There's no train to Boston, and people have come and associated as basically the dumping ground. Myself, my colleagues who I work with, those who live there, they see its cultural, its communal, and the value of its geographic location.
Plus 30 seconds, please.
My concerns that I want to bring up to you is the creation of the regulation put site control, the host agreement, and the power back to the rich landowner. From the very beginning, applicants should have been approved for their background so that you would have instilled value in them to then be able to go to these municipalities and have that bargaining chip. Here, because of these mistakes that have happened, what can be done, I believe the delivery licenses, on-site consumption, need to be prioritized and expedited, so that goes forward to give these individuals a chance. And we need to support the local organizations, the Massachusetts Recreational Consumer Council, C3RN. These are the individuals and the people who are out there that are effectuating real change with the communities, getting the municipal restrictions so that they have equitable zoning and to do all in your power regarding host agreements when you have that authority. But until then, let's get these organizations to continue doing what they're doing so economic empowerments like I can be here and be a part of the business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Any comments? Go ahead. Commissioner Tuttle?
I don't know who was in the room when, so I'm repeating myself. But in terms of leaving parts of the application to the end, we have passed that in our regulations, and it's currently being implemented. So take a look at our guidance on licensing and look at pre-certification. Also, the organizations that you mentioned are vendors for the social equity program.
Yes, and I commend you in their efforts. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicholas. I think Jessica Pelletier has already spoken, so I think is that correct? Yeah, so Jean Welsh. Ross Bradshaw. Okay, well, I think Hillary King, you win the honor of being the last speaker. Afternoon, Hillary.
Good afternoon. Thank you, guys. So I'm not an applicant. I'm not in the queue. I wasn't sure I was going to speak today because I didn't want to take up a slot from an actual applicant. But now that everybody's had a chance, I'm happy to share my thoughts. You guys know I've been showing up as an advocate and as a professional in the industry since your very first meeting. Have you ever wondered why I haven't applied for a license myself? Because I get asked that question quite often. And there's additional reasons, but one of the main reasons is that I don't qualify for economic empowerment or social equity. I don't. And I recognize the privilege that I've enjoyed to not have been disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs. There's enough barriers and uncertainty in the licensing process that I'm not ready to jump in as a general applicant. So imagine what those barriers and that uncertainty feels like to somebody who does qualify. And these people are braver than I. And more importantly, I wouldn't feel right about getting in line until the process is fair and equitable for those who do qualify as priority applicants. And it's clearly not fair or working for them. So I'm finding other ways to participate and to get involved in the industry while doing my best to uphold good values for the community. But there aren't a ton of other people like that. You have business people from out of state coming in and taking advantage of legalization on the backs of local people. We have large companies, investors, corporations that see this as only an opportunity to extract profits from a newly legal industry to further enrich themselves, taking advantage off the backs of local disenfranchised people. We've heard in this room today, people who wouldn't otherwise qualify as economic empowerment or social equity partnering and joining up with these applicants to take advantage of their status, already asking where their loopholes are, already asking how quickly and how much of that 51% ownership can they dilute and divest, sell off to the highest bidder and make their investors happy. Any regulations or policies that are designed to help promote priority applicants, people immediately pivot and figure out how they can skirt around it, find a loophole, reinvent themselves to take advantage, and that's not what this should be about. It seems like the system currently expects disadvantaged applicants, by definition, to be able to magically act like they're not disadvantaged, and that's just not realistic. I understand that there are certain things not in your control, but I believe that you should be doing everything in your power to hold off the sharks and prioritize the right people.
30 seconds, please.
See through self-serving arguments and lip service from those who would seek to take unfair advantage and practice discernment, demonstrate a moral conscience, a moral compass and a conscience. I think it needs to be said that if someone's business model relies on further disadvantaging people that have been most harmed by the war on drugs, you might be doing the wrong thing. So this goes for everybody in this room. Look within and see if your actions stack up to the values that this community deserves. What do we want to represent? Inclusion, equity, small business, positive relation with the community and repairing the harms of the war on drugs, or big business, corporate colonialism, profiteering, and taking advantage of the harms of the war on drugs for the sake of never-ending capitalism. So thank you for listening to everybody, and I hope we can start to see some bigger shifts in the right direction.
Thank you, Hillary. Appreciate it. I'm going to just make a couple comments. I'm going to welcome comments from the other commissioners. We also have, there's one agenda item that I was not aware of at the time that I sent out the public agenda, so we're going to get to that before I adjourn. But I just wanted to personally thank everybody that came today. I want to thank everybody that spoke today. I thought it was a tremendously productive and constructive session. I really appreciate the fact that, I thought it was a really good balance. I think we heard the pain that people are feeling, the frustration they're feeling, absolutely, but we also heard a lot of suggestions and a lot of things that I think are really important for us to consider. And this is not the end of the dialogue. This is not a one-time thing. You will see follow-up in terms of roundtables. You'll see follow-up in terms of summary of what came out of this. You will see these topics embedded in our regulatory discussion starting in February. So this really is an important step, but it is not the only step. And I just wanted to just give you my personal gratitude, or convey my personal gratitude for the constructiveness and the passion and the creativity that you all showed in your comments today. It really meant a lot to me, and I think it's going to help enormously in terms of getting us all to where we want to be. So thank you for that. Any comments from my fellow commissioners? Thank you. Then I have just one agenda item that Commissioner Title has asked to address or discuss with the Commission some pending legislation with respect to veterans' rights with respect to marijuana. So I'm going to turn the podium over to Commissioner Title for this conversation. And then after this is done, we will call for an adjournment. Go ahead, Commissioner Title.
Thank you. Let me first thank all of you for indulging me in this conversation, because I realize it's not the most appropriate time to bring it up. However, there is a hearing that is on Tuesday. We're, of course, subject to open meeting law, and this is the only time that I can ask, and I believe that it's significant enough that it warrants discussion. So on Tuesday, the Joint Committee on Cannabis Policy is hearing H4274, which is a bill that would help veterans in two ways. One, it would add PTSD and opioid use disorder to the list of debilitating conditions. They both could currently qualify as a other debilitating condition, but it makes a difference to have it specifically listed, and it would put us in line with other states that allow medical cannabis. The other thing that it would do is it would allow a VA letter to qualify as a recommendation in lieu of a veteran having to go to an additional provider, which can be prohibitively expensive, especially with renewals. It would let them use that letter instead, which is also done in Illinois and possibly other states. So I wanted to bring to a vote and offer for any discussion the question of the Commission endorsing this bill. And one other background item I wanted to bring up is that I think maybe about a year ago, Commissioner Doyle and I had brought up the idea of allowing letters, VA letters. And I don't believe we've had any progress on that since. If this vote doesn't go through, then I hope we can talk about it in our next regulatory discussion. But for now, I would like to ask for a vote to support this bill.
Before I ask for first of all, thank you, Commissioner Title. Before I ask for a motion and a vote, can I just ask for any other people, anyone who'd like to comment before we move forward? Commissioner Flanagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important that we have constant dialogue with regards to how this industry forms in Massachusetts. I think that the forum that we have here today, talking about economic empowerment and social equity, is important. I think as we talk about veterans, how they're handled on the federal level compared to what we're allowing on the state level is an important conversation. And I also think that the mental health of anyone is important. I literally spent my entire elected career working on mental health, substance use disorder, and everything that comes with that. And I say that because each year things changed. One year we were talking about autism, one year we're talking about PTSD, one year we're talking about bipolar and schizophrenia. So I think it evolves as an industry when we talk about mental health parity. I was the former chairman of the Mental Health and Substance Use and Recovery Committee, and I know the plights that people go through to get parity for their mental health care and to get the medicine that they need to really manage some of the conditions that need to be managed. Having said that, I'm voting no today because, once again, I don't think it's our role as a regulatory body to be telling the legislature what we as a body think about legislation. We have the ability as individuals to go up to Beacon Hill and to advocate for the myriad of pieces of legislation that are in a multitude of the committees, not just the Cannabis Policy Committee. It doesn't mean that I don't think it's an important conversation. It means that I think that our role as regulators is to regulate what's in front of us. And certainly we can be part of a conversation with legislators and advocacy groups and federal delegations and federal agencies about what we think is important for people here in Massachusetts. But given that I'm not about to tell the legislature that we support or don't support any one piece of legislation, I think they hear from me enough on my own. Unfortunately, I haven't forgotten them.
Nor they you.
Nor they me, but I think it's important for us to have that dialogue as individuals, and so I'll continue to vote no on votes that show that we are in unity with telling the legislature what to do.
Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Doyle or McBride, I would like to say something, but I'd like to let you guys go first. Commissioner Doyle?
My concern is it's similar to Commissioner Flanagan's, slightly different though, and it is essentially that I, of course, am interested in the specific language of the proposed legislation and would like to, I have some issues with it, and I'd like to work with the legislators and the proponents on possible ways to address that. So it's a little difficult for me to wholeheartedly throw my support blanketly, behind as a member of the commission when I actually would like to tinker with the language more. And this, as Commissioner Tyler knows by my response to her when she first mentioned this, was I haven't had time to do that yet. I know what I think about it and I know the things I'd like to do, but I haven't had a chance to literally sit down and tippy-tap. I've talked to one of the proponents about it. So I think what I prefer to do is act on my own so I can pursue that, because I don't know if the four of you, would be in alignment with what I'm thinking about it. So I think I'm just having a level of discomfort. I understand the effort. I obviously am very pro anything that would help veterans. My issue with doing it in the format of the group of us is that I want to do what I want to do, which is something a little different than perhaps what the rest of you would want. So I want to pursue my own advocacy on this issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McBride?
I just haven't had a chance to look at the legislation, so I'm not, to kind of do the analysis that Commissioner Doyle has just identified. I certainly am supportive of expanding anything that is going to identify post-traumatic stress disorder as a debilitating condition, but I would sort of like to, I think, talk further about what Commissioner Doyle is thinking and look at this a little bit more. So, yeah, I'm a little bit betwixt and between right now.
Thank you. Can I say something for a motion? As I said a few times already, proudly, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really know whether I have any problems with the language. I do know I support both pieces of legislation. I actually have written a letter to the legislator who sponsored the original legislation and have sent letters to both co-chairs of the Joint Cannabis Committee, because I support both pieces of legislation. But in those letters, I made it very clear I was speaking for myself, not for the commission. So I absolutely support this, but I will vote no if we bring this to vote, very similar to the reasons expressed by Commissioner Flanagan. So just want to go on record with that. Commissioner Tidal, I don't know if you have anything else to say or if you'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make one more comment and then a motion. I'm heartened to hear that there's at least an interest in discussing this further and perhaps possibly discussing further bills. When I think about the kind of commission that I want to leave behind when I go.
You're leaving us?
One day, we're all leaving. I really hope that it will be a commission that thinks about not just what we can do, but when you have something that is so squarely part of our mission as making sure that veterans have access to medical cannabis. I don't think you can get any more fundamental as to what we should be doing, that we can think bigger, than just what's within our authority. So with that said, I'll call for a vote, but I do appreciate the general openness to providing the legislature with input from us, which I don't necessarily see as telling them what to do, but just taking our expertise and everything that we've learned over the past 2 years and giving that information to do what they will with it.
I think I get to call for a vote, but I'd like you to make a motion, please.
So I move to write a letter endorsing H4274.
Thank you. Seconded by, let the record show that Commissioner Title made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Let the record show that the motion was denied by a vote of 1 in favor, Commissioner Title, and 4 opposed, Commissioners Flanagan, Doyle, Hoffman, and McBride. Thanks very much. There being no further business before the commission, can I ask for a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to adjourn, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 4:54 p.m. Thank you very much for, particularly all of you that stayed through the